Hi, I'm Georgia. I'm in year 13. I'm taking 9 exams in June. I experience exam anxiety, so I get obsessive thoughts and feelings, and I become very anxious. I'm unable to concentrate during exams, and it's very frustrating and hard during the exam period because it affects my everyday life.
Exam anxiety. It's a growing issue for students in the United Kingdom. Recent research by charity Childline has shown they delivered over 3,000 counselling sessions on exam stress from 2016 to 17, an increase of 11% over the previous 2 years.
There's no greater pressure than the worry and fear of failure.
I think all it did was lumber students with much more pressure, and the pressure was constant.
I'm Florence Cook, and I've been on a journey speaking to people on the front line of education to find out why this is a problem and what we can do about it. This is exam anxiety, the pressure to succeed.
This is my room. This is where I do most.
This is Georgia. She's a year 13 student who suffers from exam anxiety.
Why do you have those up on the wall?
I sat down with her to find out about her experience.
So I'm unable to focus when I'm going through sort of like a panic, almost like a panic attack, but I experience sort of breathing problems, but not to the extent of I'm gonna have a breakdown. But I have issues with writing. I can't write because my hands are shaking.
When did that start?
After I did my SATs, around that time, I started putting a lot of pressure on myself to succeed.
So can you explain to somebody who's never experienced exam anxiety what it feels like to be in the exam hall and to sit at your desk and see your paper?
I feel like a lot of pressure over me, like I physically feel pressure, and then my mind just sort of elevates, so it goes from, oh, if you don't pass this exam, then you're not going to do well. And then if you don't do well, you're not going to get where you want to be. And if you don't get where you want to be, you're not going to know what you want to do. I also feel like, is anyone else like feeling this at the moment? Or am I just the only person finding this exam difficult? And then my mind goes, well, if you think about it, if you can't pass this exam and they can, what does that say about your ability?
Georgia's experience has opened my eyes to the struggles students with exam anxiety may face. I wanted to find out just how common her experience is. Dave Smithson is from Anxiety UK, one of the leading charities for anxiety in the country.
We do get contacted by a lot of people, particularly young people, worried about stress, exam anxiety, or indeed their parents, particularly around this time of year as we're getting close to that exam period. Around this sort of springtime, we tend to get an increase in calls and inquiries, because it is something that, you know, stress is excessive pressure, isn't it? And, you know, there's no greater pressure than the worry and fear of failure. Exam anxiety will manifest itself in different ways in different people. So everyone will react a different way. They will have a different combination of those symptoms. So the traditional palpitations, shortness of breath, hyperventilating, sweaty palms, tingling sensations, the whole muscle tension that you get with anxiety.
After speaking to Dave Smithson, I wanted to find out more about exam anxiety and why this has become such a big issue. Looking online, the number of resources to help deal with anxiety are easy to find, but I still don't understand exactly what causes it or where it comes from.
I went to the front line of education to speak to teachers at St Albans Girls' School to find out what they think.
I think we noticed that there was a high sort of rate of anxiety with students who were sitting their GCSEs and A-levels, but also within the younger years as well, at the end of year tests and things. I think very often it is the perfectionist student, so the high achieving one. I think they have perhaps a lot of pressure that they put on themselves because they're always seeking that perfection, that sort of top grade all the time. So anything but an A star is really not good enough. But also it can affect all students of different abilities as well, just the whole process of going into the big sports hall where they take their exams, and that can be very daunting.
So how often do students actually go into the sports hall to take exams? Before 2015, qualifications were modular, meaning they were made up of a mixture of coursework and exams taken in January and June. In 2015, it switched to a linear system, and now exams are all taken at the end of 2 years. But not everyone is on board with the changes, with concerns that it may be increasing anxiety amongst students.
There are students that don't like exams, that can't perform on the day, who are finding it very difficult to revise. I believe that there is a place for the more modular, non-exam based subjects.
Lauren Cripps, Director of Post-16 Learning, thinks that no system is perfect.
The difference with linear and modular exams, I suppose, is the fact that it works for some students and some doesn't work for others. I think some thrive on that exam experience. They feel they're working towards something. It's something, they can work towards over a long period of time, and they can put all their energy in, and it's an end result. It's quite a clear end result. For some students, that is terrifying. Modular, doing coursework, they can spread that anxiety out, I suppose, so it doesn't build to the highest levels.
But Veronica Grant, a history teacher for 37 years, argues that the new system is better for students.
When it comes to comparing the linear, what I would call the old system, which is the system I worked for half my career, with the ASA2 system, which I worked for another half of my career actually, I've done about the same of both. I would argue that the linear system is actually less stressful than the modular system. And that idea of breaking it up into little bite-sized chunks and would make it less stressful, I disagree with, because I don't think it did. I think all it did was lumber students with much more pressure. And the pressure was constant. And I think the reason why the move has been back to linear GCSEs and A-levels is because the stress of constant examining at that level was damaging young people.
One of the issues is this idea that students are fear to fail.
Yes.
In your experience, where do you think that comes from?
The constant feeling that you're not good enough, I think, is massively important, and it's a climate that's been created in the education system and has been favoured in the education system, that somehow the way to make children learn is to constantly remind them of what a failure they are.
I've heard from teachers about their concerns, but what about the students themselves? Childline's research shows that exam stress has increased the most amongst 16 to 18-year-olds. So I spoke to Heather and Lucy, two sixth form students at St Albans Girls' School.
I used to be someone that got very anxious and nervous at exams, especially 2 years ago for our GCSEs. I'd be really anxious, and sometimes I'd express it in panic attacks.
I think I've probably had it since I did my SAT, so in about year 6, and then it's just got worse and worse. I think I just put a lot of pressure on myself to do so, to do well, and as a result, when I don't get it, I kind of feel like I've kind of failed, even if I might have passed the exam. If I didn't get what I want, to me it was a fail.
It's a lot of pressure from myself, and when we used to go into the exam hall, I'd get really nervous to be around other people because sometimes I'd feel like I'd just blank out and I'd watch everyone else writing and I wouldn't know what to do.
With students and teachers concerned about exam anxiety, I reached out to the Department for Education for an interview. Unfortunately, no one was available, but they did send me this statement.
We want to prepare children to have the best chance of success in the future. Students are competing with others not just in this country, but also globally. In order for them to be successful, rigorous examinations are vital. Although these can lead to added stress for many students, it is not intended to cause significant anxiety.
Neil Carmichael is the former chair of the House of Commons Education Committee, which conducted a joint inquiry with the Health Committee into young people's mental health in 2017.
One of the key conclusions of that inquiry was that there was a need to find a balance between academic skills and emotional well-being. Can you tell me a bit about that debate?
At the end of the day, if a child is not feeling happy, they're not going to thrive. And therefore, what we need to do is create the environment where young people feel comfortable, They feel that they're in a place where learning is good, where engaging with other young people and staff is absolutely what you should do.
We've spoken to several people who say that the school culture is far too exam focused and not enough attention is being paid to students. Do you agree?
I think that the question of sort of constant testing as opposed to sort of a final test is a very good question. I think that we would be better off with that kind of final test approach. We need to have an exam system which is robust, which is recognised as meaningful, because we don't want qualifications being undermined by, oh, you did that there, so that's not much good.
Okay, so it's about 3 weeks today of my first exam. I've been doing about 3 to 4 hours revision on top of my schoolwork, and doing all my other things that I have to do. Feeling a bit of pressure, but not as much as before. I'm sure it'll get more and more as it gets closer, but just looking forward to the 2 weeks after when it ends, to be honest.
With exams approaching, anxiety for students like Georgia can often get worse, but there doesn't seem to be a hard and fast rule for why exam anxiety is an issue. Some teachers are concerned about the new linear system. Others think it's more about the culture that's created in schools. But now I want to find out what we can do about it. Lucinda Powell is a mental health and education consultant who gave up teaching to help students with mental health issues.
I think we live in a culture where we tell the children your SATs tests or your GCSEs or your A-levels are everything. And I find that really frustrating. I mean, you can look very easily at many very, very successful people who left school at 16 with no qualifications and through hard work and determination have made it.
I asked Lucinda what she thinks could be done to help ease exam anxiety.
One of the things I've done with students quite a lot that they hate is something what I call visualization. So you go through an exam, you say, right, I want you to imagine your exam hall, close your eyes, hands on the desk. And actually at that point, quite often the students already start to feel the adrenaline running through their bodies. Then say, you turn over the first paper, first question. You actually can't answer that first question. But it's okay, because you know there's going to be a question on this paper that you're not going to be able to answer, and hopefully that's just going to be the one. So you're going to skip over it, and you've actually now got an hour and a half to think about your answer. And so the students have an opportunity to really think through how they're going to deal with any of those really awful situations that they're really worrying about in their head.
At St Albans Girls' School, student support staff Theo Ward and Jill Habib have created a WellBeing Program to help their students cope with exam anxiety.
So a lot of it is based on the premise of identifying, changing your thinking process, a little bit of CBT, but a very basic level, a bit of resilience, and we found that's really helped.
So do these techniques actually help people who suffer from exam anxiety? I've come back to see Georgia to see how she is getting on.
Have you had any issues with your anxiety in the past few weeks?
I did have to go to the doctors because I had a bit of a not breakdown, but of sorts. I think it was just all the build up of stress and the impending doom I sort of felt towards my exam coming so close.
I asked Georgia if she had ever tried techniques such as imagining being in an exam hall.
I would like to. I haven't tried anything like that, but I'm working with my head of 6 to try and help with my exam anxiety. And I'll see if I can suggest that to him, because that seems like it would be very helpful.
And what about the things she's looking forward to once exams are over?
Coming home and not having to do anything, really. As soon as it's over, everything's happening, and I'm really looking forward to it.
I've been on a journey to find out about exam anxiety and why it has become an issue for students in the United Kingdom. I've met people from across the education system, and it's clear they are concerned, but there isn't much agreement on why the problem is growing and how we can stop it. What I have seen is that awareness is improving, and there are new methods and techniques to help young students navigate the stresses of exams and the pressure to succeed.